Gentlemen, I feel I must share something with you, and while it might be a little uncomfortable to hear, it truly has the potential to dramatically alter the course of your health and well-being. If you find yourself waking up multiple times throughout the night needing to urinate, if you've noticed your urine stream has become weaker or more hesitant, or if you consistently have that nagging feeling that you can never quite fully empty your bladder, please know that these aren't simply inevitable hallmarks of getting older. In fact, these could very well be indications that your prostate is quietly, and quite possibly dangerously, being affected by habits you engage in every single day. I'm Dr. Evelyn Blake, and over the past 3 decades, I've dedicated my life to caring for men just like you, loving husbands, devoted fathers, honorable veterans, and hardworking retirees. Men who initially dismissed their symptoms as simply getting older, when, in reality, their prostates were desperately signaling for help. And what I've discovered time and time again is that the root cause often isn't simply age itself, but rather a collection of everyday habits. Small, seemingly insignificant things that no one ever cautioned them could be detrimental. But, over the years, these habits can quietly inflame, enlarge, and ultimately exhaust the prostate, until one day, you find that you're no longer in control, your bladder is. And here's the difficult truth. The more you try to ignore the discomfort, the more you try to brush it aside, the more pronounced and persistent it becomes. But today, that all changes, because I'm going to reveal 3 silent habits that are likely damaging your prostate right now. And, crucially, I'll show you exactly how you can put a stop to them. These changes are remarkably simple, completely natural, and they have the power to bring peace back to your nights and restore vitality to your days. So, please stay with me, because what you're about to learn could very well give your body the opportunity to heal, starting as soon as tonight. Before we dive in, if you haven't already done so, I warmly invite you to subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to tap the bell icon. That way, you'll never miss out on important, timely health advice specifically tailored for men over 60. And if you find this video to be helpful and informative, please type a 1 in the comments below. If it's not quite what you were hoping for, please type a 0. Your feedback is invaluable, and it helps me ensure that these messages are as useful and relevant as possible for you. So, let's begin with the first silent habit, something that seems perfectly harmless on the surface, but, over time, places an enormous amount of strain on your prostate. It's something many men do every single day without even giving it a second thought, and it may very well be the underlying reason why your symptoms continue to worsen. Habit number 1. Holding your urine for too long. I honestly can't even begin to count the number of times I've sat across from a man, typically in his mid-60s, sometimes even older, who recounts a very similar story. "Doc," they'll say, "I just don't know what's going on. I used to be able to sleep soundly through the night, no problem at all. Now, I'm up 2, sometimes even 3 times a night to urinate, and when I finally go, it's just a slow, weak trickle. I stand there waiting, sometimes even having to push and strain, and I still end up feeling like I haven't completely emptied my bladder." They often assume it's simply an unavoidable part of the aging process. But here's what I tell them every single time. It's not just about age, it's about pressure. The kind of internal pressure your body simply wasn't designed to withstand. And, in many cases, you may inadvertently be the one causing it. One of the most prevalent, yet often overlooked, habits I observe in men over 60 is the tendency to hold their urine for extended periods. And I completely understand, life happens. You might be out running errands, stuck in a frustrating traffic jam, deeply engrossed in watching a sporting event, or perhaps you're simply too tired to get up and go. So, you wait. You hold it. You tell yourself it can wait just another 10 minutes, or until you finally get home, or until the next commercial break. But your bladder doesn't perceive it that way. You see, your bladder is essentially a muscle, and, like any muscle in your body, it was designed to expand and contract naturally, not to remain stretched out for prolonged periods like a balloon on the verge of bursting. And directly beneath it, nestled snugly at the base, resides your prostate. The instant your bladder begins to overfill, it exerts downward pressure directly onto that soft, sensitive gland. Now, imagine that for a moment, an overfilled bladder pressing down with considerable force, like a heavy hand pressing onto a sponge. And that sponge, your prostate, is already wrapped around your urethra, the narrow tube that carries urine out of your body. So now, not only is your bladder being stretched beyond its natural capacity, but your prostate is also being compressed and irritated. Doing this occasionally, once in a while, and your body will likely bounce back without any lasting effects. But when it becomes a regular, daily habit, that's when the damage truly begins to accumulate. Over time, your prostate tissue responds to that repeated pressure by thickening. It swells. It becomes less flexible and more prone to inflammation. You might not notice any significant changes at first, perhaps just a little bit of hesitation, or maybe needing to push a little harder to get things started. But eventually, that swelling starts to constrict your urethra more and more, slowing down your urine stream and leaving you with that persistent feeling of incomplete emptying. Even worse, your bladder, exhausted from constantly struggling to push urine through that constricted pathway, begins to lose its tone and elasticity. The entire system weakens, and that's often when you finally realize that something is seriously wrong. I recall a patient named Ray, a 72-year-old retired engineer with a mind as sharp as a tack. He was waking up as many as 4 times each night to urinate. Initially, he dismissed it as simply a normal part of aging. But when it began to significantly impact his sleep, his energy levels, and even his overall mood, he decided to come in and see me. When I inquired about his daily habits, he chuckled and admitted, "Yeah, I probably hold it too long. I always have. I just don't like using public restrooms." Ray had absolutely no idea that what he considered to be a minor quirk had been silently working against him for years, gradually compromising his prostate health. We collaborated on developing new habits, focusing on responding to the urge to urinate as soon as it appeared, rather than waiting until it became absolutely unbearable. And within just a few weeks, he was already experiencing noticeable improvements: fewer nighttime wake-ups, a stronger, more consistent urine stream, and, most importantly, a profound sense of relief, both physically and mentally. This might sound incredibly simple, but it truly matters more than you might think. Every single time you ignore your body's signals, you create unnecessary stress in an area where there should be a natural, healthy flow. Your bladder is not designed to be a storage tank. Your prostate is not built to withstand constant compression. And your comfort, your restful sleep, your overall freedom and well-being, all depend on that system functioning harmoniously. So, here's my advice to you. Start paying attention to your body's signals once again. Go when you first feel the urge, not when you're feeling desperate. Establish a regular rhythm and respect those signals. And you may be pleasantly surprised at how quickly your prostate begins to calm down and return to a more balanced state. Now, if holding your urine is potentially damaging your prostate from the front, what if I were to tell you that there's something happening behind it that's causing just as much harm? Something you likely haven't even noticed until it's too late. Let's delve into that now. Habit number 2, ignoring constipation. Most men aren't particularly fond of discussing constipation. I completely understand. It's not exactly the kind of topic you bring up casually at the dinner table or mention during a friendly round of golf. But as a doctor who has dedicated decades to helping men over 60 reclaim their health and their dignity, I feel it's my duty to tell you this. Ignoring your bowel movements is one of the absolute worst things you can do for the health of your prostate. I vividly recall one patient in particular. His name was Harold. He was 68 years old, a retired firefighter, and as tough as nails. When he initially came to see me, he primarily complained about urinary problems, a weak urine stream, frequent urges to urinate, and that persistent feeling of never being able to fully empty his bladder. He had been told that it was simply a consequence of aging, and perhaps it was time to consider medication or even surgery, but something about his case just didn't quite add up. So, I asked him a question that many doctors often forget to ask. How often do you go to the bathroom? Number 2, he appeared a bit embarrassed, and then reluctantly admitted that it had been an ongoing issue for years. "Doc," he said, "sometimes it's every 2 or 3 days. And sometimes it's as hard as a rock. I just figured that's how it is when you get older." What Harold didn't know, and what many men fail to realize, is that your bowels and your prostate share a very close proximity. The lower portion of your colon, your rectum, sits directly behind your prostate. When that colon becomes full of dry, compacted stool, it's not just uncomfortable, it's exerting constant pressure against the prostate, like a heavy brick pushing into a sponge. That kind of pressure isn't just momentary, it lasts all day, every day, and your prostate feels every single second of it. But it's not just about the physical pressure alone. Constipation also triggers inflammation. When stool remains in your colon for an extended period, toxins begin to accumulate. The beneficial bacteria in your gut, the ones that play a crucial role in maintaining a healthy immune system, start to decline, while the harmful bacteria begin to proliferate. This imbalance then sets off a low-grade inflammatory response. And that inflammation doesn't remain confined to the colon. It spreads, affecting surrounding tissues, including your prostate. Now, consider that for a moment. Your prostate, already potentially under pressure from the front due to a full bladder, is now being squeezed from the back by your colon. Add inflammation to the mix, and you've essentially created a perfect storm for swelling, irritation, and dysfunction. And here's what makes the situation even worse. Most men don't even recognize that they're constipated until it's reached an advanced stage. They might assume they're regular simply because they have a bowel movement every day. However, if the stool is consistently hard, dry, or difficult to pass, if you find yourself straining or sitting on the toilet for extended periods, then you're likely constipated. Even incomplete emptying can silently contribute to pressure over time. The typical modern American diet certainly doesn't help matters. So many men over 60 were raised on meals consisting primarily of meat and potatoes, and today, they often consume processed foods, white bread, cheese, and far too little fiber. Add an insufficient water intake, reduced physical activity, and the use of medications that can slow down digestion, and it's no wonder that the system starts to become backed up. But here's the encouraging news. This is something you absolutely have the power to change, just as Harold did. I worked with him on incorporating a few simple dietary changes, such as adding in cooked vegetables, a bowl of oatmeal in the morning, a couple of prunes in the evening, and sprinkling ground flaxseed on his meals. We also increased his water intake and ensured that he engaged in some form of physical activity each day, even if it was just a short walk around the block. Within just 3 weeks, Harold not only experienced improved regularity, but his urinary symptoms also began to improve significantly. He came back and said, "Doc, I didn't realize how interconnected everything was. I feel lighter, less pressure, and I'm sleeping better." That's precisely what happens when the colon isn't crowding the prostate. The pressure eases, blood flow improves, inflammation subsides, and everything, the bladder, the urine stream, the sleep, begins to normalize. You don't need a miracle. You simply need movement, hydration, and fiber. And, most importantly, you need to stop pretending that your digestion doesn't matter, because, for your prostate, it matters more than you could ever imagine. Now, I want you to ponder this. If something as seemingly simple as constipation can physically compress your prostate and trigger inflammation, what happens when you introduce one more invisible threat? One that accumulates quietly each day without you even realizing it, simply by engaging in something that feels restful and relaxing? That's what we're going to explore next. And believe me, it's one of the most insidious and dangerous habits of all. Habit number 3. Sitting for prolonged periods without moving. Some of the most significant health risks aren't always the most obvious. They don't come with flashing warning signs or sudden, acute pain. They creep in quietly, gradually, like a chair that feels a little too comfortable or a couch that seems a little too inviting after a long day. Sitting, resting, relaxing, it all sounds perfectly harmless, but for men over 60, the habit of sitting for extended stretches without any movement can silently erode your prostate health in ways you might never suspect. I've observed this time and time again in my patients. Men who have dedicated their lives to hard work finally reach retirement, only to trade in a lifetime of motion for countless hours spent at the kitchen table, in their favorite recliner, or in the passenger seat of a car. They have good intentions. They're not lazy. They're simply embracing the quieter rhythm of life. But the human body, particularly the lower pelvic region, was never designed for prolonged periods of stillness. One patient I'll never forget was Thomas. He was 71 years old, a retired school principal, proud, disciplined, and sharp-witted. But lately, he had been feeling off. He experienced increased pressure in his pelvis, more frequent nighttime urgency to urinate, and persistent fatigue in the mornings. During our conversation, he described his typical daily routine: morning coffee in his reading chair, a few hours spent at the computer, lunch at the table, followed by an afternoon nap, and perhaps a little television viewing in the evening. It all sounded peaceful and relaxing, but it was also far too sedentary. Here's what I explained to him, and what I want you to truly understand. When you sit for hours on end without moving, blood flow to your pelvic region begins to slow down. Circulation weakens, and your prostate, a small but incredibly sensitive gland nestled between your bladder and your rectum, relies on a steady supply of circulation to maintain its health. When that flow is diminished, the tissue becomes starved for oxygen. Waste products accumulate. The lymphatic system, which is responsible for clearing out inflammation, becomes sluggish. Over time, the prostate becomes congested, swollen, and irritated. And you might not experience any immediate, dramatic symptoms. It builds up gradually, day after day. What feels like rest is actually a form of silent suffocation. The prostate, unlike your arms or legs, doesn't move on its own. It depends entirely on the surrounding muscles, your hips, your lower back, your thighs, to keep blood and fluid circulating through that area. When those muscles remain still, everything stagnates. Thomas was genuinely surprised. No one had ever informed him that sitting could have such a profound impact on his prostate. We discussed something I like to call movement snacks, short, simple bursts of motion incorporated throughout the day. You don't need to break a sweat. You don't need a gym membership. Simply stand up every 30 to 45 minutes. Stretch. Walk to the mailbox. Swing your legs. Take a deep breath and roll your shoulders. Move your hips. Remind your body that it's still alive. We developed a routine that he could realistically adhere to. A few reminders programmed into his phone. A walk after breakfast. Conducting phone calls while standing instead of sitting. Gentle stretches during commercial breaks. The changes were subtle at first, but incredibly powerful. Within a few weeks, his sleep improved, his urgency to urinate lessened, and he felt more energetic in the mornings. He even appeared lighter in his movements. That's the hidden power of motion. You're not just benefiting your heart or your muscles, you're also helping the deep, quiet regions of your body, areas like your prostate that rely on circulation and flow. You're clearing out waste products, you're delivering essential nutrients, and you're creating space for healing. And that's the underlying message of this entire presentation. Your prostate isn't intentionally trying to disrupt your life. It's simply attempting to adapt to your lifestyle. And if your habits are working against it, you'll inevitably experience the consequences, even if you don't immediately connect the dots. But here's the good news, now you know. You've learned about the 3 silent habits that gradually contribute to prostate enlargement and discomfort. And, more importantly, you've learned that you have the power to modify those habits. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to tie everything together, because understanding the problem is only half the battle. Next, I'll demonstrate how to create a daily routine that gently reverses the damage and provides your body with the support it needs to heal naturally, steadily, and for the long term. Please don't go anywhere. What comes next is the part that most men never hear, and it could make all the difference. Conclusion: you are not powerless. Your prostate has the capacity to heal. By now, you've heard about the 3 primary habits: holding your urine for too long, ignoring constipation, and sitting for extended periods without movement. They're not dramatic, they're not headline-worthy, but they represent the kind of quiet, everyday patterns that, over time, can gradually break down one of the most sensitive systems in a man's body. I've witnessed it in countless men, and I've also seen what happens when those same men take these habits seriously and begin to make even the smallest adjustments. Perhaps you recognized yourself in one of these stories. Maybe you're like Ray, who never realized that postponing a bathroom break could be the underlying cause of all those nighttime wake-ups. Or perhaps you're more like Harold, who never gave a second thought to constipation until he understood the immense pressure it was placing on his prostate. Or maybe you're like Thomas, who thought he was simply enjoying his retirement, but didn't realize that his prolonged periods of stillness were slowly suffocating his body from the inside out. Whatever your story may be, I want to remind you of something incredibly important. Your body is always listening. It responds to what you provide it and what you withhold from it. And the wonderful thing is that healing doesn't always require massive, overwhelming changes. Sometimes, it simply requires a willingness to pay attention, to respond earlier, to move a little more, to drink that extra glass of water, to pause and ask yourself, what does my body need right now? Your prostate isn't your adversary, it's an integral part of you. And, like the rest of you, it's doing its best with what it's been given. If you provide it with care, patience, and the right kind of attention, it can, and will, return the favor. I've witnessed it happen time and time again. So, please don't give up. You're not too old. It's not too late. Your health isn't something relegated to the past. It's still very much in your hands. And your next chapter can be even stronger, steadier, and more comfortable than the one that came before. If you found this video to be helpful and informative, please take a moment to give it a like. It truly helps more men like you discover this important information. Share it with a friend, a brother, or anyone in your life who might be silently struggling with prostate issues. I also warmly welcome your thoughts and reflections in the comments section below. Let me know what resonated with you, or what topics you'd like me to cover in future videos. And if you'd like to support this channel and help me continue creating free, life-changing health content for men over 60, please consider making a small donation. Every contribution, no matter how small, goes a long way. Thank you for being here, for caring about your health, and for being a valued member of this community.